Thank you, Father John Paul, and welcome again, everyone. This is the second part of our topic for today. We started 2 weeks ago on the sociability of humans, or sociality of humans, according to Maulana Karenga in his book that we have been journeying with, the Mahatian anthropology, or Mahat, the ideal moral principle of ancient Egyptians. Just a kind of recap, last 2 weeks we were talking about sociality of humans, that this is divided into two major parts. And the first part was what we call the relationality and practice. And the second part is life-affirming anthropology. Now, the relationality and practice was what we discussed last 2 weeks, and where we saw the Karenga's major focus on the role of the society, the community, if you want to say it, that the community makes the individual and the individual also makes the community. That relationality in practice is to be able to live those values of Martian values, ethics, and orderliness towards the other person, towards the neighbor, and of course towards God, because it's a principle that also has to do, or has something to do with the divine being. Having said that, today we continue on the second part, and I think our last topic for this Sankofa Political Study will be on the creation story, according to African sense, African notion of creation, which we'll talk later. But today, this topic, this life reaffirming anthropology, will end the chapter 6 of that book we have been journeying with, and on that particular topic of sociality of humans. Now, to the main topic. What does it mean, life affirming anthropology, as second part of the sociality of humans, according to Karenga, Maulana Karenga? Already we know that Karenga is an African-American scholar and activist who is best known as the founder of the cultural holiday of Kwanzaa. And his philosophy of this Martian ethics is also based, like we have said severally, on the Martian concept of orderliness, balance, and harmony. Now, life-affirming anthropology for him means that the anthropology, the sense of man, the human conception that deals with life, always in the principle of Mahat. And according to Karenga, this anthropology is a holistic approach to understanding human society that incorporates history, culture, and spirituality. And like we said, it also emphasizes the importance of community and collective responsibility in creating a just and equitable society. So a life-affirming anthropology, according to Karenga, and what is bringing out, it's an overall Martian framework, in that sense, for understanding and creating positive social change that is grounded in African culture, cultural traditions, and values. And we can say it's a powerful tool for promoting social justice and empowering marginalized communities. Now, this life-affirming anthropology, don't forget, is always in relation or in conjunction with the first one we discussed, that relationality and practice. That means where the human person is not seen in isolation, but that the individuality and uniqueness of the individual person is geared, is portrayed towards the other person, where, like I said 2 weeks ago, that the obligation of the individual becomes a right of the recipient. Like, for instance, my right is your obligation is to protect my rights, and my own obligation towards you as the other is also to protect your rights. So in doing that, we both contribute to that social justice and empowering marginalized society. Moving on, still on that, we can now categorize this, what Karenga is trying to say about this life affirming anthropology into four major categories, according, always following the Mahatma principle of anthropology that we have discussed so far, right from the beginning. And last 2 weeks, I gave a kind of summary synthesis right from the first lecturer and presenter. So the central principles of Mahatma anthropology, that is life affirming. Life affirming because it gives life to the other. Okay, it affirms the life in the other. Your anthropology, which is the sense of the human person, what the human person is, which is your individuality that portrays that. If you like, call it a philosophical existentialism, anyone portrays, you know, according to Karenga, in this few forms. First one is that Mahat is a framework for understanding African culture and society. So if you must reaffirm, if there must be a kind of life reaffirming anthropology, one must be able to stand into that African culture and society. That is, Mahat, which is a principle of balance, order, harmony, and justice in ancient Egyptian culture, urges everyone, especially the, contemporary Africans, to be able to incorporate, internalize that Mahatian framework of African culture and society, which is to give a sense of order, of harmony, of justice in the human society, in the African society. Because Karenga argues that it can serve as a useful framework for understanding African culture and society, particularly in terms of its emphasis on social and ethical values. Sorry, if you see a bit of dark background, there's a change of power a bit, but we continue. Let me a bit try to increase something here. Okay. So secondly, or one of the central Mahatma principle of reaffirming life as an anthropologist, or reaffirming the anthropology of the African, is the importance of history and tradition. Mahatma anthropology places a great emphasis on history and tradition as a means of understanding African culture and society. For Karenga, to be able to internalize what Mahat is teaching, you must know your history. You must understand your tradition. And it must become that gives one an understanding. Because it is in doing that what many generations ago have done, that we are able to now understand what we are living. This includes the study of ancient civilizations such as Egypt and the Nubia, as well as the oral traditions of African societies. Karenga also places emphasis on this as one of the things. If you don't know your history and your tradition, you cannot reaffirm the life of your anthropology. You cannot reaffirm the anthropological sense in you. You cannot reaffirm that sociality of humans. And in that sense, we can say, like the previous class we had, you cannot relate in practice with others. Another third one is the significance of community. Mahatma life reaffirming or life affirming anthropology emphasizes the importance of community in African culture and society. The contemporary African must be able to know the importance of community, must be able to know that he or she is not in isolation. Sure, that your individuality, your uniqueness must be able to be brought out, must be projected towards the other person, but you are nothing if community is not involved in whatever you do, in portraying that person. Your character, your personhood is seen in as much as there is importance, there's great importance of the community living that each one has incorporated. This includes the idea that individuals, like I said, are shaped by their social and cultural environment, and that community values and practices play a central role in shaping individual behavior. If we go back to our traditions and cultural practices, you will see that we Africans of contemporary Africans have lost a real great of these community values and practices, beautiful cultural practices, not just custom, because cultural practices, culture does not change, customs change. Okay, if the culture of, for instance, the Yorubas is to, let's say, dressing, for instance, is to dress, modestly, and the women uses wrapper and all those ones. Obviously, that culture will not change, but the custom, that means the modality, the things that surrounds it, can change. Okay, the way that is being worn, the latest styles and all those ones. But most of us, even in language, for instance, we have lost that cultural, that community significance, that community values and practices placed on our language. And languages now have become a kind of foreign language, Eurocentric language, or Western languages have become what we use as tool, as a kind of meter to value the character of the person, which, according to merchant anthropology, to reaffirm ourselves, that won't give us that character. For instance, I watched a beautiful video in which one guy was making a beautiful analysis that you see someone who could not maybe speak this so-called English very well, and because of that, his true person is not given that chance. He will not be given that chance to portray his true person, and as if that language is the one that will bring out his character. And you see a whole lot of people making wrong choices because they look at the external, they don't look at that cultural value and practices. So my anthropology, to reaffirm ourselves, we must hold strongly that community. We must be able to identify with the community values and practices so that it can play a central role in shaping the individual behavior, in giving us that character, that Mahathian character, which is orderliness, harmony, balance, not to go to the extreme. And the other one, the other central principle is the importance of spirituality, like we are saying. At one of the lectures Father Tony was able to give, also this natural or the material conception of evil, natural evil in the human person, to tell you that Mahat also itself always also give us that sense of spirituality, because it believes as well. It is believed that also the human person is not just pure material. There is the spiritual aspect in it, and that person must always be able to rejoin, reconnect with the supreme being. So by anthropology, to reaffirm ourselves, that spirituality must be there, which emphasizes the importance of spirituality in African culture and society. This includes the study of African religions and spiritual practices. Many of us, we know all these African religions. Okay, by the way, African religions in itself, being plural with the word, does not mean being plural in essence, like we say polytheistic, but as individual religion that at the same time helps us to reconnect to the spiritual being. So for us to reaffirm our anthropology, this sense of human person, we can't cut away the spiritual aspect, because the spiritual with the material makes us whole, make us unique, make us a complete human person. So my Karenga emphasizes that the human person, the contemporary African, must not be cut away, in the practice of African religion. That means, and when he's saying should not be cut away, the question I will pose is how you could, or in interpreting Karenga, would be that if you are even a Christian, you are a good Christian, an authentic African. I don't get what I don't understand. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Like your the religion you subscribe to should not cut away your authenticity. And your authenticity as an African also includes your knowledge of African religions. Do you accept some things? Because, of course, we know the way some African religions are being practiced might not give that reasonableness. It might not be reasonable for us to accept it, to appeal. It might not be appealing to us, but that does not mean that we should not cut, in the sense that because a lot of all these African religions that we know, they are more than religion. They are what we call, they are what I would say, a kind of science in itself. They are a kind of intellect in itself. They go beyond religions about just what to do, or go beyond ethics and a code of conduct alone. So to be able to reaffirm ourselves as authentic Africans, we must also include the study of African religion. Please mark the word, the study of African religions. And by the time you know what we call this, how will I put it now? Study of religions or religious experiences, we see that the conversion being part of it is not just conversion to belief. There's also the intellectual conversion and the social conversion. Intellectual conversion, not to know what is behind, the reason behind other religions, especially the African religions. And social belief or social conversion, to be able to allow people to practice what they believe as well, without us imposing on them, without us also cutting short of them. So reaffirming ourselves in the Martian anthropological way means to take to heart this importance of spirituality in African culture and society. That means by way of studying this African religion, we have beautiful of them. And for instance, if you are conversant with Ifa, a lot of scholars are coming with Ifalogy now, or Ifaism, or whatever you want to call it, and you will see that it has a whole lot of basis and as foundation for science, even computer science. This is not being disputed again in the academia field. If you know it, you know it. So knowing this African religion, taking importance in African spirituality, will not only make us to study African religion and spiritual practices, but as well, it will become a way in which spiritual beliefs and practices inform social and ethical values, and ethical values. So overall, we can say that the Martian anthropology, or reaffirming anthropology, provides a framework for understanding African culture and society that is grounded, like I said, in African-centered perspectives and values. Does it mean that you should not know what is coming from other perspectives, other European or other cultures, Indian or all those ones? No. In fact, you have to know, because if you don't know, you might not be able to appreciate what you know, and you cannot even know what is wrong in those kind of philosophies or in those kind of thoughts. So Karenga argues that the principles of Ma'at, like we said, which includes truth, justice, righteousness, and reciprocity, because that is what the Sociality of Humans deals with as a whole, have to serve as a framework for understanding and addressing contemporary social issues, because we have many of them, such as inequality, oppression, environmental degradation, violence, religious fanaticism, and all kind of that. But by promoting the values of Ma'at, Karenga believes that societies can work towards a more just and equitable future. Kind of the real society we believe, it's not just that we know this as knowledge, it has to become a kind of spirituality, what we believe in, and as well as methodology, what we have to teach, first to ourselves, like we're saying, mental emancipation, to unlearn what we have not learned, and to teach to others, so that we believe that employing this kind of philosophies, this kind of thought, of course, according to Martian principle, in a balanced way. You will not imbibe Martian principle if you, for instance, what you are criticizing is what you are doing, that is by imposing it on others. You are not being balanced. You are going extreme, like in ethics, in virtue ethics. If you quote Aristotle, it will become like not being balanced. Virtues lies in the middle, and that practical wisdom that one have to also employ, because these things are connected, it will not be seen. So in the way of making it a methodology to be taught to others, you are not to impose it, but you have to teach it if you believe in it. But to be able to teach it, you have to believe in it. And when we say African-centered perspective and values, like I said, we are not to be cut away from other things, because of course, no culture, no religion, no human community or society has the monopoly of knowledge. You can be a custodian of a particular aspect of knowledge, but you don't have the monopoly, which means there are other doors also that open up. So when we say we are African-centered, it's to recognize our own Africanness, to make it the center in which other things revolve, but open our ways and our ears and our own perspective to others that will enlighten us, while also we make our own also known to others. The danger is when we are cutting off our own and we are accepting others as the true one without really knowing what we have. Okay, but in this last aspect, Karenga was able to do something as well, to be able to bring out this Mahathian reaffirming or life-affirming anthropology. I would say he contrasted Thomas Hobbes' political assertions, or Thomas Hobbes' way of viewing man. That means Thomas Hobbes' anthropology, which we can say that it is stated in a kind of five different ways. So for Hobbes, man is a kind of total war. There's this war against everyone. When we read this book, how it lays out his political philosophy in his two major work, especially the Leviathan, how it discussed the concept of nature or state of nature, which is central to what Hobbes will do. And Hobbes uses in two basic ways, to define the extent to which one have to go. And like I said, Karenga was able, to be able to set straight why Mahathian anthropology is much more authentic to humans, especially to Africans. He listed in what way, several ways that the state of nature, according to Hobbes, has been characterized. And those several ways, the first is the refusal of humans to recognize and accept authority. Hobbes stated that humans has this innate refusal to recognize and accept authority over them, And the second is a condition in which they all have equal power, like humans all have equal power, and they don't want who will rule. They don't want one person to rule over them. But at the same time, this give way to that. They know that everybody cannot as well rule, and this makes them to be able to see the aspect of the condition in which the refusal of the multitude of men to recognize one another, to be able to at least choose one person that will still rule them. And fourthly, that the condition is characterized as one of war. This is what I was trying to say, one of war of all against all. In Thomas, or in Hobbesian words, he sees that as a way that which there's a war against everybody. There's one war of all against all. So everybody is fighting one another. And fifthly, according to Hobbes, key to the development of this state of things, or the state of nature, according to Hobbes, is the fact that humans are essentially egoistic. That's what he's trying to say, that humans don't portray the individuality in humans is just for their egoism. And Karenga is saying, no, in Mahathian anthropology, the individuality is towards what, like we have said, towards communitarian living, towards society, towards relationality in practice, towards a kind of reciprocity. So given this fundamental aspect of Hobbesian anthropology and political philosophy concerning the origin of state, it is clear that there's no parallel, between them and Martian anthropology. Why did Karenga, for instance, have to make reference to this? You know, I'm trying to get it. First of all, that this is what we practice these days. Most of the political states or forms that we have are based on all this kind of philosophy, political philosophy, you know. And if we look at option philosophy, political philosophy very well, or societal norms to be lived by, we will see that it is grounded in a kind of psychological egoism, which finds there's no way in it, there's no parallel, there is no comparison with it in Martian philosophy. On the contrary, Martian ethical philosophy is essentially communitarian, justice, truth, orderliness, harmony, balance, you know, which sees the individual that has to be the one as the yardstick to reciprocate to the other one. So in Martian anthropology, a person defines himself or herself by his or her roles and relations. Okay, you reaffirm yourself by your roles and relations as one honored before town, district, and family, friends, as well as before God. So you are not just to yourself or to your neighbor, even as well as to the supreme being, God. So thus the communitarian character of Martian thought, as opposed to the 17th century European thought about the individual, preludes a concept of a state of nature which is solitary and brutish character. So Hobbes' description of humans as creatures whose life is a continuous struggle for gain and diffidence and glory against each other. That's why I say it is a war on all against all. You know, the war of everyone against one another. In the Martian anthropology, it's not even a war. It is a living. It is a life of one for the other, and the life of others for the person, because in the individual you see the community, and in the community you are able to see the individual. And to sum up, Martian anthropology then consists, like I said before, contains no concept of evil by nature. That is according to Karenga, you know, evil by nature, that no person is born with evil, with natural evil, as opposed to some form of varieties of Judaism and Christianity, and that the state of nature does not reflect human egoism as or as natural or moral way of living. On the contrary, Martian ethics contains an anthropology which posits that only in community can one ultimately recognize, this is the central point now to conclude, only in the community can one recognize, ultimately recognize, realize, and reaffirm one's humanity. You can't do that. You cannot reaffirm, recognize, and realize yourself, your individuality, your authenticity, your naturalness, and the way you live just by looking at yourself alone. You have to recognize that because you are born into a community, into a society, into a family, these things shaped you, what you know, how informed you are, and the extent of your exposure. So this is the central meaning of what Karenga is trying to portray about the Martian anthropology. But within this human nature, which is in reality human possibility, the triumph of the good is perceived and assured. Okay, so the good also is there, because the human person, like I said, is not cut away from his supreme being. It's not cut away from the other. It's not cut away from itself. And if we want to understand this chapter 6, for those who have the book or who wants the book, go and read also the Martian ontological conception, or the Martian ontology. This is chapter 5, if I'm not mistaken. This has, you know, this one's talk about the essence of human person, what makes the human person. And this conception of the power of Mahat as a kind of positive anthropology to be able to make the person. So the person become person in community, person in community. You are one with the community. You cannot be separated from the community. You are not just yourself. who wants to use the community to gain access to yourself. You know, it's very practical with our political situations these days. And somebody was making analysis today, like, which of our political leaders during this campaigns that, you know, you see them, they line up here and there to associate, to see themselves with the people. Do you see now after the elections? Okay, even we cited Obi. Do you see Obi now in queuing in the airport? And do you know how many flights he has taken after the elections? You know, to confirm to you that if we see ourselves person in community, we will go beyond rhetorics. You know, the power of speech that people can give, and we go with living relationality, reciprocity that brings out the character and not just rules and regulations that governs one another. I think I will stop here so that's not to bug us too much. I think maybe there are a bit of complication or some thoughts not so clear. So we are hoping for questions now to be able to ask and share together for those who want to contribute or those also who needs clarification. So to the moderator, over to you.
Oh, yes. Thanks so much for this wonderful presentation. Now, it's clear that human beings realize their beingness, their essence, and their goal in life when they relate with others. And this kind of relationship is actually translated into the communal living, because the community cannot realize itself as a community without including the individual. Neither can the individual become without the community. This is to show that there is a kind of synchronization, there is a kind of complementarity between the two. They go hand in hand. And this brings us to lots of questions. You know, the individuals that make up the society and the society that incorporates the individuals. I think probably now you have a lot of questions going on in your mind, and there are some points that we are not that clear. We give ourselves 2-3 minutes to think about them, and then we'll open the platform for questions. However, remember that down there is we have the chat section where you can put in, digit in your questions, and we'll respond to them promptly. 2 minutes, and then we'll get back to you. Remain connected.